All right. Next up, Izuchukwu Udokwu. Is a Nigerian storyteller, also the best dressed person here. His work has appeared in Kalahari Review, Afriata, LOLWE, and others. He was shortlisted for the 2020 K&L Prize, and his shortlisted story was published in an anthology of speculative fiction on Afrofuturism called Black Skin, No Mask. He also owns a fashion brand in Nigeria, which he uses to tell stories through the outfits he makes. He was one of the recipients of the inaugural Open Country Mag Fellowship, and Vanity Team named him a designer to watch.
Sorry, what I'm about to do.
You can get it and get close to the mic, like make out the post.
Alright, so sorry about what I'm going to do now after that incredible performance. Some time ago, I realized that it is with written words that I'm capable of moving emotions, from anger to fear to tears. It is with written words that we are made gods. And this is why storytelling matters. Stories are what we use to make alive the dead past. So it is safe to say that we have the resurrection power in our words. My grandmother was a storyteller, because she is gone. She had a kind of skin that made me think of her when people said to me how nice my skin was. That made me say in my mind and sometimes out loud, "You've not seen my grandmother's skin." That made a nurse, after my grandmother died in a hospital bed, question how we were going to bury such skin. What a waste, I guessed she thought. My grandmother was 91 years old. I miss her a lot. I miss her hugs. They were warm and full and fragile. So to deviate a little, there is scarcity of hug in this country. I remember the first hug I got here was from Taylor. I remember it because I yearned for a hug. And I remember the fewer others that came later from Seda, Delight, Seth, Madina, Sabrina, and most recently at AWP from Colette. I memorize them because they often come as a pleasant surprise, a beautifully wrapped, unexpected present. In Lagos, where I lived, hugs were abundant. And so, I want a city where I do not barter for a hug, where hug is no longer a thing I memorize, a thing that feels like a gift. This is just a reminder that some of us are too far from home. And so we often need that warm reminder of an embrace that home is wherever we are. My grandmother's chieftain's name was Gold Umwawala, which loosely translates that she was the gold of our clan. It was not just because she shone like the sun, but also because she wore a lot of gold jewelries that she bought with the profit she made from selling different kinds of things. Corn, when it was corn season, cocoyam, when it was harvesting season, different kinds of fruits whenever they arrived. She was a hard worker with 9 children to raise. She bought a lot of George wrappers too. A year or 2 years before she left, I sat on an old mat that often lay on the elevated concrete patio, close to the old sofa she sat on, close to where she had buried her mother at the beginning of the Nigerian Civil War, or what we call the Biafran War. the sofa my grandfather always sat on before his ancestors pulled him home. I said to her, Mama, Mama, tell me what happened during the war. She took a deep breath. That was probably the first time I had seen her pause in that manner, as though she was unearthing the memories she buried long before I was born. Or maybe she just didn't know where to start. Aya where you see, she said. War has no value. My grandmother's skin gleamed of grace, the supplest skin I've ever seen on an old woman. And I thought, this skin too has seen wars and had come out unruffled. Aya Ajoka, she said, Onwe Hedekaya, war is ugly. There is nothing as ugly as war. And I wondered how the ugliest thing in the world didn't match the frenzied display of the wrath of war, as though her voice too had been scorched by it. She said that mothers left their children and ran, that when at war it is just you alone and you are left in the dark that leads to the dark that leads to nothing. You learn to hope that your body has learned when to lie belly flat and when to run, and that your reflexes kick in even when your mind doesn't. My grandmother, when they had to vacate our hometown, carried on her head what took 5 people to lift onto her. She was not just carrying their properties, she was carrying their savior, her gold jewelries and her George wrappers. If hunger wants to kill my children and I, she said, I sell 1 wrapper or 1 gold jewelry and money will be everywhere. But then that money vanished fast, like hope snatched by each blast. I looked at her and I saw the lines of struggle on her hands and on her feet and nowhere else. Her beauty was not lost in the lines on her face. She said that sometimes when they ran, shrapnel cut down the people behind her. Once she turned, she saw a woman collapsing to the ground. A shrapnel had pierced her neck. They called it flying death because the sound was often heard from a distance, but the effect extended beyond its perimeters. But death didn't come for my grandmother during the war, or her husband, my grandfather, or her children. There is a saying, my grandmother said, Anayeji, nago, no ukwara. No one swallows fell to quench hunger pangs. And she laughed and continued, whoever made this a proverb has never seen war. Even your tears become a source of iodine, your nails a source of calcium. Who would have thought that the rice weevil would become a source of protein? Disagreement leads to war. War leads to hunger. And hunger becomes a weapon of war. So when they tell you that you have not seen war, my grandmother said, tell them that you have seen your grandmother and your grandfather and your father. I looked at her and I saw the structure of pain in telling the story. It wore a parallel grief for the things lost and for the things only the heart knew the language. I didn't understand the language, but I knew the shape of pain and grief and anger in her voice and the way she constantly said, Aya Ajoka, Onwe Hedekaya, war is ugly. There is nothing as ugly as war. Thank you.